Hey, this is Dayna Johnson, and you're watching the Best Practices Show.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the Best Practices Show, where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices all over the world. And if you're growing your dental practice, one of the things you have to have is great financial arrangements in place. And I've got one of the world's experts today to talk about some of the specific mechanics that get in the way and also help a practice grow when it comes to making those arrangements and how to get them out of your head and in the computer with Dayna Johnson. You do not want to miss this. So do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button. You're going to love it. Now, couple show notes. We're shooting this live on Facebook as we always do. So if you're watching this, during the day and it's the live broadcast, add your questions to the feed if you have them, and I'll dish them to Dayna while we have Dayna on the show. Also, if you're watching these later on, as we watch the metrics, a lot of you're watching them late at night or whatever, you can continue to add questions to the feed. And Dayna, I saw how you even responded to shows that we did a while back when people were asking questions, and those were some great questions. So continue to do that, because we want to stay in constant dialogue with you and make sure you get the most out of each one of these shows and apply them back into your practice. Have your team members watch them too. Have them add questions to the feed, and you can get answers straight from the experts. It's awesome in that way. So also keep sending us suggestions for shows. We're getting a ton of them now. A lot of them you send through email and other things. We are lining them up, and as you're going to see, we've got some of the world's best experts even this week on the show and next week. So love it, love it, love it. And we're up over now 39,000 followers on Facebook, and over 150,000 of you have visited us on iTunes. And I don't have anything to say other than thank you. So we are just having a lot of fun. Now, my guest today, Dayna Johnson, you're like our resident expert, magician, magic person up at the front. And all things considered when it comes to the flow in and out financially and computer in a dental office. And Dayna, I know who you are. We've had you on the show before. A lot of people in our community know who you are. But if somebody's watching this, because we do have dental students watching this now, if they don't know who Dayna Johnson is, give us a little background on who Dayna Johnson is and what do you do?
Oh, thanks, Kirk, for having me. I love being on this show. And so I kind of fell into dentistry, actually, way back in the day, 25 years ago. I started working in a company installing computers and networks into medical and dental offices. And so then over the years, I've worked at 2 dental practices. And in 2006, I became a certified Dentrix trainer. So most of you know me from being the Dentrix expert. And so I've been working in dental practices and consulting and training and helping offices create systems, for the last probably 10 years. And I absolutely love it. I mean, it's just, I know, like you, I love what I do every day. And, my mission is to be an advocate, a resource, and a voice for all the dental offices out there. And so that's what I do every day. And I love it.
Yeah, and you do a fabulous job of it. And so today we're going to be talking about a huge problem that happens in a lot of practice. I've seen this for more than 20 years, is you can get a lot of these things right. You can get the financial arrangements right. But one of the things you have to do is you've got to get it out of your head and in the computer. Now, before we get into the mechanics of how to fix this, let's talk about why this is such a huge problem. Why is this such an important topic today?
Well, the interesting thing is, because I go into practices and I'm either helping them create new systems or I'm helping them tweak systems. And, your entire day revolves around your practice management software. And so that's why I became a software trainer is your entire day revolves around this computer. But what I was finding was I would go in and I would work one-on-one with the financial coordinator. And, one of the things that we're going to look at is the accounts receivable. And, we look at the insurance accounts receivable, and we look at the patient accounts receivable. And so when we start looking at the patient accounts receivable and we look at the over 90-day accounts, what I was finding is we would start going through the report and I'm saying, okay, well, tell me about this account, because they have an over 90-day balance and I don't see any billing statement going out. And, what I would hear over and over again is, oh, they're on a payment plan. Mm. Oh, the doctor said that they could make $100 a month payments. Oh, they're just making payments when they can. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's talk about this account. Oh, right. Yeah, they're making $100 a month payments. And so that became a really consistent conversation that was happening over and over again when I would go into multiple different offices. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting because they have it stored up in their head. The financial coordinator, the office manager, they're smart women or men. And so they keep a lot of information in their head, but what was happening is it wasn't getting into the computer. So there was no tracking system. There was no management. There was no way of following up with patients that maybe have missed a payment, or even having some kind of a recurring payment payment arrangement. And so, patients might not get billing statements, or they were getting a billing statement, but it was having their full dollar amount on it. So there's just all this dysfunction going on around managing of the overdue balances. So I get that your first line of defense is you don't want to get into a payment plan situation. I mean, I get that most offices want to collect over the counter, and they want to collect as much as possible on the day of service. And, we talked a lot about that, Kirk, at my last live show, which was about improving the cash flow. Right. And so our goal is always to collect on the day of service, on the day the treatment happened. But I do understand that, patients do come about hard times, or maybe the doctor has agreed to a payment plan or something, so usually the goal is not to have a payment agreement, but it does happen occasionally. And I'm finding that it's happening a lot more than I've ever seen before. And so that's why I really started to advocate more for let's have a management system around this situation, because the financial coordinator, she wants to take a vacation, or maybe she leaves the practice. And then if all of that information is still in her head, then she leaves with it, Mm-hmm. I can't read your mind. The doctor can't read your mind. And so we want to be able to have a good system in place for when a patient is on a payment plan. And so that's the whole gist of, what we're talking about today is get it out of your head and get it into a system that you can track and manage easily.
Yeah. And Dayna, I want you to talk about that just for a second too, because we're finding the same thing with our coaches, is that this is happening way more than we ever have seen it. And every dentist is so funny. They're like, no, we don't have any problems with that. No, we're good. We're good. Yeah, our collections are good. And then we're like, oh my gosh, like everyone's got payment plans in their heads. Now, that creates a lot of problems because number one, let's just go to the legal aspects of it. You're exposing yourself to some very dangerous situations. I'm assuming everybody watching this is, doing things the right way. But we had David Harris on a few weeks ago, and 2 of 5 dentists will be embezzled. I think I could screw his stats up, but you're talking 40% of all dentists will be embezzled at some point. So you don't want to, and everybody says, no, that won't happen to me. Trust me, it will cross your path. And of the people that get embezzled, the stat that he gave me that they get embezzled a second time is mind-boggling. So You don't ever want to create a situation where that might happen or could happen, and lending itself to people's putting in their brains is definitely exposing you to that. Second thing is this: you're creating a people-dependent practice. You're not creating any systems at all when Judy does everything, because it's exactly what you said. Judy leaves, she takes all the payment plans with her. She takes everything with her in her head. And then you go, oh my gosh, we need another Judy.
I know.
Judy, and then you look on dentalpost.net or, Craig's, I need a Judy. And the new Judy comes in and goes, I don't know what the old Judy did, but I'm going to, and you look terrible as an office because you're like, don't you guys communicate? So you really want to create something that's very predictable. I always say if it isn't written down, it doesn't exist. But
exactly.
Are you finding the same thing when you go into offices?
Yes, absolutely. When I'm sitting down with the financial coordinator and we're going over the accounts receivable report, and she's telling me everybody has a story,
Right.
all these patients have a story, and she knows everybody's history and what their payment is and what their situation is and why they're in a payment plan. She knows everything. The financial coordinator knows everything. But I'm like, okay, well, show me where the information is. Where's your documentation on that? Oh, I just know. I just know. I'm like, okay, well, what if you had a meeting with your doctor? Or maybe what if you had to take a leave of absence because you had a medical emergency in your family? Or, what if the doctor wanted to see documentation? Or maybe you got audited, for something, or, anything. I just want you to protect yourself. I want you to have it documented. And I'm wondering if maybe office managers or financial coordinators, they feel this sense of security. Like, are they feeling a sense of, oh, if I keep all this in my head, they can't let me go because I'm too important.
Right.
I'm not assuming that, but I'm just kind of wondering, what the reasoning is, why they don't put it in the computer. Because if they put it in the computer, they feel like maybe they're exposing themselves to I don't really know, but it's just so important to have that documentation. Like you said, if it isn't written down, it didn't happen, because if the patient calls and they want to talk about their payment agreement or their payment plan, maybe they have to extend it out another week, and another team member answers the phone and they're like, I don't even know, what your payment plan arrangements are, You're going to have to talk to Judy when she gets back, So yeah, I think that if you have it documented, then anyone on the team can help with that conversation.
Right.
And that's what we're looking for, is a cohesive team that is aware of the situation.
Right.
I don't think payment plans are always a bad thing, but what is a bad thing is if the patient calls and they want to have a conversation about their payment plan and then nobody else on the team knows about it.
Right. My first thinking is, gosh, you guys even have a clue to what you're doing here because I'm calling you and then we scramble around. So it makes you look bad. But let's go one layer deeper on this. Is that when the real reason is it's really not about the money. And Dayna, what I found, and tell me if you found the same thing, is the payment plan is a very healthy part of the relationship you have with the patient. Yes. Because when the patients pay, they show up. So exactly. This is a rock solid system you have to have in place. It can't be left on a whim or to talent, because when you've got great payment systems in place, you're going to find people show up, they pay. Yeah. And the more that they pay, predictably, the more they show up. So it's not so much about money, it's about predictability. Would you agree?
I agree with you 100%. And it's all about the relationship. You want to hold that relationship. You want to create loyal, happy patients. And if you take this maybe unfortunate situation with a patient, maybe the dad lost his job and they have a $2,000 balance and they need help. So if you're able to take this situation and turn it into a saving situation, you can save this relationship, put them on a payment plan, get a credit card on file, document it in your computer system, in your practice management software, so that when another family member comes in and the hygienist sees that there's a payment agreement, then the hygienist can have a conversation with the patient that says something like, it looks like, Judy has your family on a payment plan for your existing treatment. I know you need something else. Doctor, diagnosed that a couple more fillings on the lower right. Let's go up and talk to Judy and see if maybe we want to build that back into your payment plan, or maybe, we want to do a different situation. But when the hygienist also sees it, and there's like new treatment, oh my gosh, the patient would feel really empowered and saying, oh my gosh, thank you for understanding that, seeing that, we are on a payment plan. And I think just that communication with the whole team really builds loyal patients, because they understand that you're helping them recover from maybe an unfortunate situation. But there's also a lot of offices that do payment plans on a regular basis. And so I think that anytime you are extending payments, we also have to realize that when you're extending payments, you now become a lending institution. And there's also things that go into play with that. And so that's kind of our next little topic, is about, okay, what are all these details that have to be in play for this payment plan? What are the logistics of this payment plan? And so your practice management software really comes into play with outlining the details. So are you going to apply finance charges on this overdue balance? Are you going to apply a late fee for this payment plan? Are you going to have a credit card on file? I think that's a must. I think you have to have a credit card on file. And then what are the terms? Is it monthly? Is it weekly, bi-weekly? So you have to put all of these truth in lending pieces into play and get a patient to a signature for that, because it's like you are loaning them money, and you have to put yourself out there as far as the legalities of this payment plan. I just want to go back to having a credit card on file. So, one thing that we have to look at is, are we storing that credit card in a PCI compliant way? The payment industry has very specific rules about how you can store this credit card. And so that's extremely important to have a system in place for the credit card, so that you are not being real loosey-goosey with their credit card information. Because if you somehow had a breach of that credit card, then you're in big trouble. So what I recommend for that is reaching out to your merchant card services and see, do they have a portal where you could store the credit card on file, set up recurring payments, and then the credit card is being stored in a secure environment. And you can set up the recurring payment agreements. So that I was in an office in Boston, and we did that with their online portal. So we were able to store the credit card, set up the recurring payment. It would post automatically on the day that we set up with the patient. They had a consent form already built into the merchant card services portal, which was awesome. And then the patient would get an email saying that the payment had gone through with their payment plan. And so it was beautiful. And, if you're online right now and you're a Dentrix user, Dentrix just launched Dentrix Pay, which is now a secure environment where you can store the credit card on file, have recurring payments. It posts directly to the ledger. It integrates with the payment agreement feature. And so I think that practice management softwares are understanding that offices need this solution to keep their accounts receivable in check, and give the financial coordinator and all the team members a portal or some kind of a visual to see this patient's on a payment plan. Their payments come out on the 15th. They're doing $100 a month, and it ends on September 30th or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this. And you mentioned the word details. We're going to go into the details of this now. Dayna, you've been so gracious to offer our listeners and watchers a free tip sheet. And so we're going to talk about that in a second. But these are some critical steps you can take to get the financial arrangements out of your head and in the computer, just like Dayna's talking. But take us through this. Like, if I'm a dentist watching this or a team member watching this, where do I start? Like, where would you start?
Well, I think it all starts with, of course, it all starts with the treatment plan presentation. And of course, we do want to always try and collect on the day of service. But I do see quite a few offices, even for a crown, offering, 3 equal payments over 3 months. So even if you're going to offer 3 equal payments over 3 months for a single crown prep, then you want to put this in place. So it could start at the time of treatment planning when you're scheduling the patient for that crown. So let's say your crown fee is, $1,200. The patient's going to make 3 equal payments. So they're going to make $400 over 3 months. And so at the time of the financial arrangement, you would want to put the payment agreement in play. So put it in the computer. What are those details? Okay, they're going to put $400 down. Maybe that's when they schedule, they put $400 down.
Now, are you a big fan of that at the time, collecting some type of a payment or a deposit to secure the appointment?
I do like that, but it's really hard to implement. I mean, I think offices really, that's a complete mind shift to do that. I would love to see it happen more often, because, it's interesting that humans, we put more value on making a dinner reservation or renting a rental car where we gladly give them our credit card to hold the reservation, and more so than our dental, our oral health. And so I think that that's a complete mind shift of asking for a credit card to hold the reservation. But I would like to see that more in play. It's just, you have to get the doctor on board and get that whole concept, mind shift to the whole team. But, that's probably a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a confidence issue too. Like if a team member values what they do and they believe that money spent in their office is a good investment, it's quite all right. And it's what you should do is ask somebody if I'm going to trade you some time, I'm going to ask you for a financial commitment. I'm not just going to give you time and hope you show up. But I just thought I would ask that question because, I wasn't sure if you saw it.
I don't see it very often. Because, we also have to remember that we're the ones that train patient behavior. And until the office has that mind shift, they're going to have a hard time training the patient with this new shift, this new behavior. So the payment agreement is 3 payments over 90 days or whatever. We get a financial arrangement consent form that outlines the terms of the payment agreement. We get the credit card on file. So we put the credit card into the online portal, the merchant portal, or if you're a Dentrix user, you're using Dentrix Pay. And so the terms of the agreement get signed by the patient, get into the computer. So now when the patient comes in for the appointment, we see that those terms right in the computer. There's no question. And the patient has already signed the agreement. So there's no question. It's just this is the terms. These are the terms we agreed to. And so any member of the team has access to that information because it's already in the computer. And then, so that would be a patient that you're agreeing to the payment plan at the time that you're scheduling treatment.
Right. And can I ask you, I want to go back to just the breaking up the payments. And this is a controversial issue. A lot of people don't always agree on this. If you're going to extend a payment plan. What's your thoughts about over a 90-day threshold? Because your receivables will show you anything over 90 is always a challenge. What do you recommend to the offices you work with if they're going to extend payment? I would guess you're not extending payment to 12 months, 12 equal payments type of a thing. Do you recommend 3 months, 6? I mean, what are your thoughts?
As short as possible.
Okay.
I agree because, in our last conversation with the cash flow, I threw out some statistics that if your receivables go out past 90 days, the amount that receivable is worth significantly goes down. I think the statistic was at 90 days, your receivable is only worth about 65%.
Right.
Was worth on the day of service. Now, it's a little bit different if you already have the payment plan in place, because there's no chasing the patient usually because they've agreed to it, they've signed the agreement, you have a credit card on file, so you're not having to send the patient a billing statement, get on the phone and try and chase that money. So it is a little bit different when you are setting up the payment agreement from the very beginning because the patient has agreed from the very beginning.
Right. Now,
so,
can I finish your thought because I have another question on that. So did you have another thought on that?
I'm going to go on to the next thing. So if you have a question about this.
I do. What are your thoughts? Well, I've been doing this for as long as you have too. And then the whole statement thing. What are your thoughts when people say, how many statements do you send? Do you send statements anymore? Like the word statements. Tell me what your thoughts are on that. So billing statements is a courtesy, of course, to the patient. Now, in our last, cash flow talk, I encourage my teams to send billing statements, a couple times a week. So I don't feel it's a monthly task anymore. I think that if you're doing a statement run, every couple days, the patient's still on a 30-day cycle, but if you're doing statements at least a couple days a week, then it doesn't become such a big deal. I also like the fact that you can send statements electronically so that you're not having to fold and stuff and lick envelopes. I think that process is ancient and that should go away so that it's not such a huge burden on the practice. My thought is probably at 90 days, I'm sending my first collection letter. And so, that was going to kind of segues us into our next payment plan option is if the patient is at 90 days and they have, you've sent them the collection letter that, in 15 days, your account's going to go to a collection agency. And the patient calls you up and they say, oh, no, please don't do that. I love you guys. I've been going there for so long. I don't want to lose you as my dentist. Then you're into a payment agreement kind of after the fact. Mm-hmm. So now you kind of the same process now, though. What are the terms? You need to set the terms. Because another thing that happens in a practice is, let's say you treat a patient, you do a crown, and the patient has a $600 balance. And they walk out the door without paying their copay that day. Mm-hmm. So they have a $600 out-of-pocket balance, and now that you have to chase that money. And so then let's say, a couple weeks later, you get a $50 payment from the patient, and you deposit that payment. And then let's say 30 days later, you send them a billing statement, say 30 days later, they send you another $50 and you deposit that money. Mm-hmm. Now you have all of a sudden entered into a payment plan with that patient because you've deposited 2 of their $50 payments without saying anything. Right.
And so now if you try and chase that money, you've actually non-verbally entered into a payment plan with that patient for $50. And you didn't set the terms, the patient did.
Right. And people only remember what they want to remember, which is also dangerous. So patients can say, no, I didn't agree to that. And
right. Yeah. And then you were saying, well, I didn't agree to $50 a month. And the patient, well, you deposited 2 of my $50 payments. So then now you're in this awkward conversation.
Right.
So why not be proactive about the financial conversation? And, maybe in your letter to the patient, you say, I want to save the relationship. You're a great patient. I know something has gone on in your life. Please call me so we can get you at least set up into a payment agreement. Yeah. You need to set the terms of the payment agreement. Don't let the patient set the terms.
Yeah, and I don't know who said this, but I heard somebody say this at one time many years ago, that people that owe you money don't like you. They just don't. So don't get into a situation where people owe you money and you think about it, anybody that you owe money right to now, you're just avoiding them. You don't want to pay the bill. Yeah. You're avoiding their phone calls. It's awkward. And so I think one of the key things is understanding that a truly healthy dental practice has extremely confident and healthy financial relationships that are systematized with each and every patient, because we know that can get in the way of our relationship. Now, I have so many questions that I want to ask you, but I also want you to keep to your task. When it comes to financial arrangements, there's always the question of the courtesy, the 5% or the 10% courtesy if people pay in full. Are you a fan of that? Not a fan of that? And then let me also couple what if this patient is a Delta patient, or an insurance patient, and you're giving them a 5% courtesy, plus they're taking another hit on the other side. Like, can you just give us some perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that whole world has changed quite a bit. Okay. When I was working in a practice, we did give a 5% payment in full courtesy for our cash patients. I see some offices give. There's a lot of offices now that have membership plans for their cash patients now, patients that do not have dental insurance or dental benefits. So a lot of offices now have a loyalty program, a membership plan, whatever you want to call it, and where they're giving the patient maybe a 10 or 20% discount off services if they're part of the loyalty program. So I'm seeing that a lot. I would never give a discount to a patient who has dental insurance because you're already taking a 20% hit if you're contracted. And even if you're not contracted and you're billing insurance, you're still having to wait for that money to come in with 30 to 45 days from the insurance company. So I think that I'm not a big fan of giving a patient a discount if they have dental insurance, because you're already taking a hit and you're waiting for that money. So patients should be expected to pay their copay if they have dental benefits helping them with that procedure. Now, your cash patients, I think it's important that you give them something, whether it's between 5 and 20%, you decide what that is. I'm a cash patient. I don't have dental benefits. And so I go to the doctor. I don't have health benefits. And so when I go to the physician, they give me a 30% discount, which shows, what they're probably taking the hit for if a patient has insurance. So, I think cash paying patients do like having that, little incentive to pay. They're expecting to pay in full anyway if they don't have benefits. So giving a little 5% or 10% is definitely, worth the relationship. And I love membership plans. Definitely. Yeah,
I do too. I think it's a non-negotiable. You just have to have one. And if you're not on one, find one and get one. So definitely. What's the next step at getting this out of our head and in the computer?
Okay. So then we are at the point of, so the patient has walked out the door now, they owe you money, and now you have to chase that money. And so the payment plan details really still don't change, except the fact that you need to dictate the terms. So, for example, going back to my example just a few seconds ago, if the patient has a $600 balance and they send you a check for $50, and then they send you another check for $50, okay? You need to call that patient. Do not deposit that check. Okay, I know that's hard to hold money.
Right.
But do not deposit that check.
Right.
Call the patient and say, hey, it looks like it looks like you want to set up a payment agreement with our office. And the patient says, oh yeah, haven't you been getting my $50 checks? Yes, I have your second one here right in my hand. Unfortunately, I want to set up an agreement with you and let's agree to some terms. So is it possible for you to do $50 a week, which would be, $200 a month to take care of your $600 balance within the next couple of months? Does that work for you? And if the patient says, oh gosh, there's no possible way I can do $200 a month. I could probably do $100 a month. Okay, great. Would it be better for you to do $50 every 2 weeks, or would you like to do $100 on the 15th of every month? And let the patient choose one of those two options. So the office is still dictating the terms of the agreement, but you and the patient are coming together on a payment plan that works for both of you.
Yeah.
So you're not just depositing the patient's checks. You are coming together with an agreement. You need to have it in writing, get it in the computer, get the terms in the computer, get their credit card on file. Now you have them on the phone. Great. Let me get the credit card on file that you'd like to use for your payments. I'm going to send you the consent form. You're going to be getting an email from me with the consent form. If you could sign it and bring it into the office or sign it and email it back to me, that would be great. If your merchant services company can have an online consent form where the patient could maybe do an electronic signature like a DocuSign or something, that would even be better. Right. So let's take advantage of all this technology that we have, and then get the patient to sign the agreement, get the credit card on file, get the payments in a recurring payment situation. So you, as the financial coordinator, don't have to now chase that money. And because that's where a lot of the work gets in, is that you're chasing that money all the time.
Right. And you don't have to do that because that's just a flaw in the system that you created. Exactly. And you're also creating hundreds, if not thousands of hours of work for somebody that works at the front, and you're irritating your patients. So I like the direction you're going. I think if you're going to extend payment, I've always been a fan, like anything beyond 90 days is just dangerous. I don't even like anything beyond 60 days. And I also like where you're going with this on the weekly transaction, because every consumer knows that when you do a monthly transaction, it's too far in between. It's 4 weeks, that you're getting one transaction, another one, you're like, darn it, I'm still paying for that. But when you're doing a weekly transaction with a credit card on file, $50 a week on a Friday is much more noticeable, and it's much more regular, and it's less of a burden on a patient when they're doing a smaller amount weekly than it is a bigger month, because it's easy for them to stop or change their credit card or do whatever in that whole thing. And I think it's just really important now that dentists and team members alike have to be really smart about how they create healthy relationships with patients, and everything is documented and systematized. I love this, Dayna.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, Kirk, is that, maybe if you want them to do $100 a month, how about if we do $25 a week? Gosh, that would be, that's 3 lattes.
Yeah.
$25 a week would give you $100 a month. And if you want to do $200 a month, can we do $50 a month? Or $50 a week. And try and break it up into smaller pieces for the patient. The patient is going to really appreciate you trying to work with them, but you still trying to be accountable to your practice and, collect that money. But getting it on a recurring system with a credit card is critical.
Critical. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's our next step to get it out of our head?
So you keep going. So the next step now is just the internal.
Well, I want to learn it all.
Yeah. Now the step is just the internal management. Okay. You have the agreement with the patient. Now it's basically just looking in your practice management software. What is the report that is then my tracking system? So then if I have to follow up with anybody, I can see exactly on a report who's on a payment agreement, who's on a payment plan, how many payments do they still have to make? Have they missed any payments? what's their payment amount. So you just have like a line item report that shows you if you have 10 patients on a payment plan, you get a report for that. So if the financial coordinator ever wanted to take a vacation or, has to take a leave, or maybe she leaves the practice completely, she can now turn over this report. These are all the patients that I have that are on a payment plan. It just simplifies the process, and you turn over all the list of patients. This is how I've been following up with patients. These are the patients that all have credit cards on file. Here's the login information to our merchant services, and you just turn over that management system to the new person or whoever is going to be covering for that patient or that employee on leave. The doctors will also love having a report like that.
Yeah, and now in Dentrix, what's the name of the report that
It's the payment agreement summary.
Okay, so they can just print that off weekly? Is that what you recommend?
Yeah, it's fantastic, or monthly. And it also links right up to the Dentrix Pay. So, it's just fantastic because it just becomes this automated system. You maybe weekly, you look at, okay, what are all the payment agreements I have this week? With the click of a button, it bills the credit card, it posts it to the ledger. It's a beautiful thing. I just absolutely love some of the automation that has been built into our practice management software.
Absolutely. Love that. Mm-hmm. Love that. So good. Well, what other considerations? Is there anything else? I want to make sure we cover all the things on your list, because I could barrage you with questions forever, but I want to make sure we cover everything.
Well, I think that, if you're having monthly team meetings, going over numbers, because when you do extend payment plans, your over 90 accounts receivable may go up slightly. I've been seeing offices with 30-40% over 90 accounts receivable balances. And, if you have an AR that looks like that, I think it is important to let your team know that, yes, our over 90 might be a little bit higher than an average practice. This is why. Here's all the patients I have on payment plans. They're all set up on credit card auto withdrawals, and things are going well. Even though our over 90 might be a little bit higher, this is what's going on. So I think the team being involved with that as well. I love going over numbers with the team, and it also just shows that you have somebody that's managing the AR and looking out for you, because a lot of teams are incentivized on collections, and so if your accounts receivable or your collections aren't quite right, it could be the reason that you're not managing your payment plans very well. Right.
Absolutely. Which again is just such a key piece to the practice. Any last thoughts you'd have on this, Dayna? Like on personnel? I always think this, I'm curious what your thoughts are. I think you got to have somebody that's at the front that has a healthy self-esteem, and they're not, they're not fearful when it comes to money, because that can ultimately kill the practice. And it's not a judgment. It's not a mean thing to say. There are just some people out there that are horribly uncomfortable talking about money. And there are also some people that are horribly uncomfortable with eye contact. They'll go, Mrs. Jones, your fee for today is 7. And I really feel this. If you're in a discretionary service where people have to reach into their pocket and pay for something, you got to have somebody really confident who believes in what you do, that believes in your fees, also doesn't think you're expensive, looks a patient right in the eye, and confidently communicates money. Would you agree with that? Would you add anything? Disagree?
100% agree with you. So I think a couple things. We have to remember that numbers and money, it shouldn't be an emotional conversation. It should be, you're empathetic, but you're not. You don't get into the emotional side of it. And personalities come into play here for sure. I teach a course about solving the 3 most common battles between the front and the back. And one of our big topics during that presentation is personalities. Mm-hmm. And so knowing what your team personalities are and having somebody in that position who is good at communicating that conversation in a very unemotional way, empathetic but not emotional, and so doing personality testing, I think, is really important, because you wouldn't want, like in my practice, I would never have my hygienist talk about money, because she would give away the bank. I mean, she would give away everything, because she felt so bad for people. Right. I can't charge them that. And I'm like, oh yes, you can, so, and I'm a high D with my personality on the DISC test. So I was perfect in the financial world, because I could have those really tough conversations. But then if I was talking with somebody who might have a different personality, I would have to be careful not to make them cry. So, personalities definitely come into play. And I think it's important that the team do some kind of personality test, and also try and identify what kind of a patient you're talking to, because you also want to have a conversation with somebody. Do they just want the bottom line details, or do they need the whole story? So also, it's not just the personality of the team member, but also what kind of patient am I talking to here?
Right.
And get a better result if you have a better communication style with your patients.
Amen. I love this. Now, I know people are going to be listening to this on iTunes, and if they want a copy of your free tip sheet, how can they get a copy of that?
It's Dayna, Dayna, at Novonee, Novonee.com. That's my personal email.
Awesome. And they can also find out more information. Now, Dayna, you actually go into offices, you help people with this. Give us a little, if somebody's watching this and like, Dayna, I need help with this, you actually can help them. So give us a little perspective on how that works.
Yeah, so I would first probably want to do some kind of an assessment, because not only financial systems, but we also look at your continuing care system, your patient retention numbers, your treatment planning, case acceptance. So there's a lot of core systems that go into running a dental practice. So the financial system is extremely important, but I also look at all the other core systems that you have in your practice. So going into practices, I love going into practices 2 or 3 days. It's the funnest thing I do. My company can also give CE. So if I come into your practice, I can give AGD PACE CE certification for my courses. So that's a real added bonus for sure.
Awesome. And they can find out more information on your website, which is novonee.com, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Dayna, well, again, I'm always so grateful of our time we get to spend together. You know great things about some of the details that we just, love to get our brains around. And you and I are going to have many conversations on other areas of the administrative parts of a dental practice that are just challenges. And I'm just so grateful for our time. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, it is my pleasure. So stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you guys for watching, if you're watching today. And do us a favor, if you enjoyed today, which I know you did, just do us a favor, just hit the share button, share with your friends, and keep sending us suggestions for shows that you want to see with Dayna and then even other guests. We'll always try to do our best to line those up, see if we can do those in a timely fashion. And until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. Guys, enjoy the rest of your day.